Welcome to Rauta. I am Jerry, and this time we're about to review some Finnish black metal, namely Clandestine Blaze, who had the 12th album already out in 2023, summertime that is, but due to some misunderstandings and circumstances, this came a little bit late to the review, but nonetheless, music never gets old, especially if it's the good kind. But before we delve into the music, before even we start unboxing, let's take a quick look to what Clandestine Blaze has done so far. What is the fuss all about and all that stuff. Now, this is a vast topic, and obviously we're not going to go into the depths of interview level and all, but quick look is nonetheless in place. What started is in 1998 by Mikko Aspa, always worked with his real name, much like the guys in Vatine. This became more than a solo project very soon. I mean, it's definitely a solo career as such, but the whole thing became more like a band. Well, solo nonetheless, but I mean, it's not just one gimmickry which just releases one or two albums and then just pisses off. And obviously the man is known behind his own label, Northern Heritage Records, and ever since the first album, that's exactly what the man has been doing. He's also a record store owner, has sub-labels and other projects, a man of very many talents, a man of many activities, and of course a lot of controversy due to certain topics. Now, you might find something here on Metal Archive's site when you take a look at themes labeled as anti-Abrahamic religions, cruelty, perversions, misanthropy, war, anti-Semitism. However, this is not labeled NSBM, and for a reason. But this goes beyond the scope of this video. Let's just stick to the very basic things which are listed here on Metal Archive's site. Now, as you can see, the discography is quite vast. That means there are already 12 albums within around 25 years, and also compilations, demos, what have you. I remember quite early on getting some of these demos, like Blood and Cum, on a tape, and it would really feature the stuff described. But long past are the days when this was all about like splits with that spell Omega or Satanic Warmaster and the like, and things of like that are in the past. But these kind of splits might be a reason why Mikko Aspa, for example, got connected to Dead Spell Omega in the first place, even though never being officially a member of the band and all that stuff. But like I said, this goes beyond the scope of the whole review, so let's just stick to this album called Resacralize the Unknown, which came out in 2023 summertime, July. And being a 34 minutes of an album, features 7 tracks of scream and quite raw black metal, and a cover that can be understood in many ways. You have people like, what the hell is going on, and then some kind of power coming from the sky, from the heavens. Maybe it's a black sun, or maybe it's exactly a nuke or whatever, which is something that is described here along the lyrics. I was going through the lyrics particularly for a couple of reasons. First of all, I know that Mikko Aspa is very, he thinks, and I cannot really disagree with him, that lyrics are very much of importance of music. And especially with Clandestine Blaze, they're not just, the feel the lines there, but they actually are delivering a message. This is something that I have debated with him when I've, been in talks with him, when I have asked him about interview possibilities and all that stuff. So for the sake of this review, I wanted to, read them. I wanted to put a little bit thought to them, and I will then describe them, or at least mention some parts which how I interpreted them as a reader, as a listener. Now it's time to take a look at the CD, and as you can see, we have the cover already taken care of. Let's remove the booklet, and let's remove the CD, and well, this is how it looks. Very basic CD case in the sense like there is no transparent CD tray, so there is no point to remove the tray. And when it comes to the booklet, there's a classic Clandestine Blaze logo and old English font kind of approach to the track listing, which is here. And then you have the lyrics. They are indeed very readable, and I like it that even though the headlines are here in a kind of unreadable font or not that easy to read, at least in terms of readability. The colors used are in such ways that you can read. There's no excuse when you buy it. And of course, since they are already on Metal Archives, there is also no excuse not to read them without buying the actual album, which is something that I totally recommend people who are looking for controversies and topics to talk about. And as such, this is very much the whole game here. Now we'll head back to the Metal Archive site for background information, for a backdrop, while I tell you a little bit about the music. Musically, Clandestine Blaze have never ever really evolved or changed, and this is for the good. I mean, what started in the 90s has still maintained the same thing going on. It's grim and it's raw, yet it's not one of those super raw, super primitive black metal ones that are sometimes like hiding the song structures and riffs and all underneath so-called raw production, which seems to be the case with some bands that, want to go super raw, and then they go so lo-fi that it's like even hard to figure out what the guys are playing, which in essence is something is lost in translations. I mean, why bother doing good riffs if you're gonna anyway drown them in super lo-fi production? Now, while Clandestine Blaze, even with Resacralize the Unknown, the 12th album, is quite, brutal and raw, it's not like out of proportions. I would say partially because of the songwriting and partially because of the production, it really reminds me of the Darkthrone's golden era. It's almost like going back to the 90s, the early ones, when you would say, yeah, we want to keep black metal raw and grim, not so approachable to the mainstream audience. Whether we're talking about drums, they are not clumsy, but they sound like this is not overly produced. Or guitars, they're shredding and they're kind of nasty and dusty, but they're not like, hey, what the hell is this guy doing with the riffs? I'm saying there's a certain level of rawness which you really can achieve without, losing it, without dropping the ball and making things like inaudible. And this is, in my opinion, a good balance between the overly produced music. Whether we come to extreme metal, talk about high-profile death metal bands which tend to be like this big and majestic production, and sometimes it sounds way too plastic, way too sterile. This is not there, obviously, and not at the same time in the raw end, but in the balanced section, which I think is very fitting for this kind of music. Now, there is obviously a big difference when we're talking about, say, Clandestine Blaze or Marduk. Obviously, different bands require different kind of production, and what wouldn't work in terms like, for example, bands like Batine or Satyricon will work for Clandestine Blaze, and vice versa. You really couldn't expect this kind of stuff to work with, Marduk, or vice versa once again. Now, when it comes to the vocal performance, it's kind of a raspier end of things, which is, in my opinion, putting them closer to Nocturno Cultos of Darkthrone style rather than any of those high-pitchy, screamy, or shrieky stuff. I mean, there's so many ways to describe vocal performances, and none of them are verbally going to give you exact what you're looking for. My point here is, some people might mean shrieky when they're actually talking about high-pitchy, screamy. I'm not talking about Danny Field style. That is roughly the opposite end of this, without going exactly growling style of death metal and the like. Now, of course, there's also some kind of a grunting, which is sometimes, or even certain semi-growling, which is sometimes between the black metal raspiness and, well, real death metal vocals. I'm talking about the guttural style. Now, this is not that far in the G section, growl, guttural, grunting, etc. But it's definitely closer to the lower end as opposed to high pitchy. Not necessarily for everybody, but then again, what extreme metal is in the first place. So we have a lot of grimness, we have a lot of rawness going on, and that is fitting to high tempo material here. When I say high tempo, I don't really mean the kind of what Shooter or bands like Marduk are doing with their faster parts. But then again, this is not really like your mid-tempo thing anyway. But overall, I would say nicely balanced with grimness. Not for everybody, that's given, but can't really say that this is super lo-fi, super marginal stuff either. Now, when it comes to the lyrics, which I promised to mention in this review, well, there are few different topics. I guess I'm a little bit surprised that these are not as, how to say, boneheaded in the sense of in your face as they could have. I mean, Mikko Espa is a man of strong opinions, and I respect him for that reason. I mean, there are other reasons too, being a multi-talent and all, but I like how he interpreted some of the things. But then again, some of these are quite poetic in terms what it could really be. Being myself as some kind of a lyric writer, I've been writing some lyrics which really piss people off. And I'm totally fine with it because I have done my share where things are really rubbed on your face. And some people are like, okay, that's too much, that's too punky, that's not poetic at all, that's not metaphoric. And I'm like, yeah, that's how it's supposed to be. Then again, there are lots of lyrics in the world which are overly metaphoric, which is like, what the hell is this guy trying to say? Like, what's the point really? And those sometimes like kind of annoy me because I feel like some fancy words are being used without really saying anything. And this is the beauty of Clandestine Blaze. These are not rubbing it in your face in their simplistic ways, but also not being overly metaphoric, overly poetic, and all that stuff. So there is a certain set of themes which are really easy to follow. However, that being said, when I was listening the music and reading through the lyrics, I was like, with some lyrics, I'm like, I'm not sure what he really means. Like, this is calling. This is like picking up the phone and saying, what the hell are you meaning with these lyrics? What are these all about? Maybe. Let's hope so. Possibly. We are talking about interview possible in the future, or maybe that is not happening. I don't know. But some of these lines here, some of the pointers are like giving me like, okay, I want to pick the brain. I want to ask about certain topics. But some of these are more to the point, more obvious. But then again, there's also still possibility of misinterpretation, which is not that uncommon. We're talking about extreme metal, not alone black metal. But for example, The Birth of the Sun, to me it's like, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong here, but I'm like, okay, this is a song about nuclear power, that being harnessed into human use. And I'm like, okay, this is pretty brutal, kind of almost like a death metal theme. But then again, I might be misinterpreting it once again. There are also some other lyrics on this album which are a little like, this could be seen in various ways. I mean, I like them, but then again, I'm still like pondering if I got them wrong or correctly. And that's part of the charm here, but it's also borderline annoying. Annoying because when you think something is what it is, it really isn't. You might be disappointed when you figure out the truth, or maybe you never find the truth. Now, that being said, there are topics about obviously Christianity, there are topics about religion, human meaninglessness. I would say the overall approach is quite nihilistic. But not overly so, not to the boneheaded levels like kill yourself and fucking die, because this is not about it. But there's a lot of questioning around, and by nihilism, I really mean this is like pointing that not some of these stuff here don't have inherent value, and sometimes the human life is kind of like misled or going to parts where the evolution never happened. Maybe that is also kind of a metaphorically what Clandestine Blaze is all about. You don't really evolve, you don't really change, except for the ulterior things maybe. I don't know. Like I said, there's a lot of interpretation, and my way to read them might be totally different from yours, so there is that. Now, before we're gonna quit it, because I don't want to make this a 30-minute video of nonsense and bullshit and all, I would say if you're a previous fan of Clandestine Blaze, there is absolutely no reason why not to check it out as well. Now, if you hate for whatever reason the whole band, you don't stand the character behind it, you don't like the topics, you don't like the music, this ain't gonna change it, because the thing here is, like said in the beginning, Clandestine Blaze is Clandestine Blaze, for better or worse, and this is not changing that. In my opinion, this is not the best Clandestine Blaze album out there, nor the worst. Not that the band never did like bad ones, or even mediocre ones. I would say Clandestine Blaze at its weakest is still pretty good, and when it gets really good, well, it is indeed really good. This is somewhere in the middle. Solid, good album, but like I said, not my favorite one. We shall see how it goes in the future. Will this be a grower? Will my personal ranking change over the years? That's quite possible, quite likely even. But so far I would say roughly putting this in the middle of Clandestine Blaze discography. Now that being said, off you go, check it out. Obviously, like some people would already know, this is not available on your typical streaming services apart from YouTube. So you have to do a little bit of your own research, or like I always tend to say, if you like it, buy it. It's available in physical format, CD and LP through Northern Heritage Records. You can order it directly from the label or go for your local distribution. Now, up to you. Off you go. Check out the links provided, and I hope you enjoy it. Take care.